Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Thriving LDS Singles podcast. It's so great to have you here. Today, it's Kim. Hi, Kim.
Hello.
And myself, and we're going to discuss the topic of people that we love leaving the church. And we know this is something that affects pretty well all of us, whether it's our children, our partners, our parents, our friends. It's something that's happened to all of us.
Yeah.
So you're nodding your head there, Kim. You know about this.
Yeah. Or even, how do you feel about the term having a faith crisis? Like they're questioning things. I mean, it may feel like a crisis to them or may not, but just questioning their faith maybe is a better way to say it, because we talked about some of these terms we're not so happy with, right?
Well, that's right. So we often talk about them leaving the church as if that's sort of like the thing.
Or they've gone astray. That one really makes me feel like I got kicked in the stomach almost. It breaks my heart.
Or they've gone inactive.
Yeah.
They're not inactive. They're still active. They're still living their life.
Right.
So yes, we've got all these terms, which is really all they've done is made a decision that's not according to what we think they should be doing.
Yeah.
And who are we to tell them what they should be doing?
Right. They've made an alternative choice. And that's why we're here on the earth, right? Is to
make choices.
That's why that's what free agency is all about. But so
yeah. And so just because someone, talking specifically children, we've raised them in the church, we've taught them all these things, but somewhere along the line, they've got to get their own testimony, usually in those teenage years where they're trying to argue with you and tell you you're wrong anyway.
Yeah.
But, when we think about these, the famous examples of, Joseph Smith being 14, I mean, he's arguing with his parents about religion. He's like, his parents are trying to go, come to this church. And he's like, I'm going to figure this out by myself.
Yeah. Or we could go back to Laman and Lemuel, they were, that was their whole issue, right?
Yeah. You've made us come all this way because of your stupid dreams.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you imagine doing that with your, in this case, they were probably early 20s. Can you imagine getting your early 20s children and going, okay, let's do this?
Yeah.
So most of our kids would go, stuff you.
I know mine would. In a loving, kind way, or maybe not.
Maybe not if we were going to drag them into the desert away from their beautiful, comfy home. And
yeah.
So, I always feel sorry a bit for Laman and Lemuel because we use them as an example of, the bad guys.
Yeah.
They actually followed their father into the desert. Like they gave up all that stuff. They took all their belongings and just packed up their sleeping bag and went into the desert.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Their father. And what I was just listening to a podcast the other day about the fact that, they were probably in that category of the Jewish faith and thinking, what is my father? He's the one that is making a wrong choice here, because that's not what the culture was at the time. So it wasn't at all that they were, these disobedient, evil children. They were being faithful to what they and another option, another choice.
Aren't we supposed to be, settling down, getting married, being serious, like not traipsing off to the middle of nowhere?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then at the moment we've just been reading about a Mormon.
Yes.
At 10 years of age, someone picked him out. And it's like, whoa, I don't know about you, I teach primary. I can't pick any Mormons in that group.
It would be hard for you to identify a future prophet. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. It's like they're not bad little boys, but they're definitely, I wouldn't call them sober and observant. Or
yeah. Then they are little boys. They're
little boys. So, but by 15, he's leading armies and stuff. Yeah. Like he's, and so our children are these, we hear the stories of these occasional ones, but our children are just normal people making decisions, and somewhere in their teens they're going to start questioning, which is what they're supposed to do. That's the job of teenagers, is to start saying, I'm separate from the family, and I need to start figuring out what I think and what I believe and what I feel.
Right.
And so if we sit there and tell them they're wrong, then we're going to have a fight. And rightfully a fight.
Right.
Whereas you think of Joseph Smith's parents when he came and told them that, like, I've had this vision, and they go, tell me about it, rather than, oh, what sort of stupid thing have you come up with?
Exactly.
Which is what everybody else did to him.
Yeah. It's so true. And I think that's probably the first area that we should delve into a little bit, is when a child comes to us and says, hey, I'm questioning these things. Hopefully you have a healthy enough environment that they do come to you. That's the first thing, right? And so you definitely want to be paying attention to that. But so let's say they do come to you and say, I'm in this place about questioning my faith. Then the first thing I think that's important to do is really look inside about how that's making you feel inside. Because if especially, and I think this might be more typical of moms, because they've invested their whole life in raising the children. Oftentimes they've been a stay-at-home mom. And so it's easy to get caught in that trap of tying your self-worth to what your child's accomplishments are or what your child does. And the second we start doing that, then we're going to lose our footing, because that's not where our self-worth should be coming from, is our children's accomplishments, even anything worldly. Our self-worth comes from the fact that we are divine and we're a child of God. That's why those identities that President Nelson talks about are so critical, because that's where our self-esteem and our self-confidence should be drawn from, is that relationship with our Heavenly Father. But if it's tied to what do my kids accomplish, or what, are they doing all the things I expect? There could be an element of control in there. So all those things, the first thing to take a look at is, how is this making me feel? And to maybe manage or delve into that a little bit. Is there some healing or some work that maybe we need to be doing with ourselves? Because if our children's choices make us question our own self-worth, then that's something to dig into. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. So often it's so easy, isn't it? When the kids are bad, you go, oh, they're doing something wrong. It's their, what's wrong with the child?
Yeah.
And when they do
It's
something,
my husband taught him that.
Yeah, that's right. And when they do something right, it's go, oh, aren't I a good parent?
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I know by the time they were 1 year of age, you could already tell what sort of personality they were going to be.
Yeah.
And
I think there's
as
definitely
parents, I
something to
think,
that.
as parents, our job is definitely to keep them alive. And that in itself could be quite challenging.
This is true.
No, you can't jump off the garage roof. No.
I did get home one day just in time to see my son, Sam. He was tying a rope to his waist and he was going to jump off the stairs down to the level below. So, there is some scary. Or the time I came home and he was meditating with lit candles all around him, very likely to start a fire. So,
and now as adults, they're telling us the stories of all the things we didn't know that could have killed them. So, oh.
Yeah, that's true. You're like, you did what?
So the job of keeping them alive is definitely our job, and it's a hard job in itself.
Yeah.
Obviously, not being abusive is a big thing, so not damaging them.
Yeah.
But other than that,
loving them in the very best way we can. Loving them as, giving them, providing them their love and obviously
the
healthy
love,
meals and
yeah, the
clothes on
love
their
and
back.
support to be the person who they were in the spirit world. Like that, they've come to us as formed spirits.
Yeah.
And some
Yeah.
of these, we know that some children by the, in their childhood are faithful children. They seem to have the spirit with them by the time they're 8.
Mm-hmm.
And there's others that are questioning very early on. And
That's true.
maybe that's just who they are. Maybe there's nothing wrong with them or us.
Yeah, I would definitely say there's not anything wrong with them, because that is another danger, right? Is
Mm,
what's wrong with my child, or what, there's the what did
mm.
I do wrong? And we definitely need to address that, because I can't think of a parent that wasn't even, and sadly an abusive one, that was not doing the best that they could. I mean, that's what they were emotionally
That
or
they were taught. Yeah.
equipped to do.
It's
And
very hard to parent better than you were parented. Like,
yeah,
it's because that's what you were taught. And
yeah,
so if as parents we sort of like, now I read all the stories and go, oh, I should have done that, I could have done that, I should have done that. It's like, but I didn't know.
yeah.
And we're only as, like, we can only judge ourselves on what we knew at the time, not on what we know now.
Yeah, and our own emotional health and capabilities and all those things. So,
Mm,
I think the number of parents that are intentionally trying to destroy their children is very, very small.
very
We do have a
small.
few, mental illness cases or things, so it does happen.
Mm,
But I think, even in cases where there's been a lot of neglect and mistreatment, that was certainly not, the parents didn't wake up every morning thinking, how can I destroy my child's life? Or
and so
so,
that's one of our jobs, sort of, and you and I are both finding it now as we're entering our later life, as like healing from our childhood and forgiving our parents,
yes,
because they really did do the best they could do. And yeah, we
yes,
can sit there and go, but they weren't very good. It's like, but it was the best they could do. And
right.
so, I'm hoping that my parents have learnt lots of stuff in the next life, and I will see these people who the love that they had will now be the main focus rather than the,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
and the
there's,
healing takes, like, I think we were too busy raising children to do too much of that healing at the time, and we're healing now, and it's like, oh, I'm ready to have kids now. I could do it now.
yeah, that's why grandkids are such a blessing, right?
Yeah, that's right. And people
But
say to me, oh, you're such a patient person. And I'm like, yep, I am now. Ask my first 2 children whether I was a patient person.
that's right.
Anyway, but that's slightly off topic. But yeah, so if children are making a choice
Mhm.
to go and investigate other ways of life, that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that we've failed. If
Yes,
anything, it's a success, because they've got the trust and the faith, especially if they come and tell us or ask us questions. It
yes,
means that we've actually done a good job, and that they're going and asking questions,
yes,
which is what they're supposed to do. So to talk about them, as inactive or left the church, or they're derogatory terms, aren't they?
yeah, yeah. That's how I feel about it. I think it is, and the truth is that it's almost arrogant of us to take responsibility, or to say, hey, you turned out that way because of my influence. I mean, we all know our influence matters, but you know what I mean? They are individual, their own children of God, and God has
Mm,
their back just like he has our back. And they have to work through those things, and we have to be able to allow and support it and work through our feelings of inadequacy, or feeling like we did something wrong, like you say, or feeling like we were a failure, and get healthier from that perspective. And the big thing, if you're in like the Utah culture, or even a tight community that has a lot of people with similar beliefs, then there's always that fear of what'll the neighbors think, or are they going to look poorly upon me? And all those worries are just good clues that we need to work on our own self-esteem and our own self-confidence, because the second we start trying to do things because of what the neighbors will think, we're betraying ourselves and our relationship with Heavenly Father.
I see that in the Facebook groups that I read, where
Mm-hmm.
mothers are sort of like beating themselves up or worried about it, whereas
Yeah.
it's not such a big part of the church in Australia, because pretty well everybody's got children who have wandered away.
They have a lot more influences, other influences, right?
Yeah, maybe it's influences, or we're just accepting that, we don't have that same, everybody has to stay in the church or we're
Right.
failed.
That perfectionist
The
comparison
perfectionist.
culture
Yeah.
is
Most of us
prevalent.
as parents here have been converts. So, we understand the conversion process maybe more of,
Yeah.
and we understand that our knowledge of the gospel wasn't all that strong when our children were young.
Yeah.
In Australia, we didn't get a temple in Australia until the 80s. So most people weren't even sealed as a family. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
different culture. And I think that's actually good. I like it, as opposed to, as I said, on my experience is just reading people on Facebook groups, but that it's like they're panicked.
Yes. And that is something I really enjoyed about being in Arizona too, is experiencing a little bit different culture from that perspective. So, yeah.
Because so don't panic. It's like, this
Yeah.
is the journey of life. It's the
Yeah.
journey we had to go through. And I'm a convert, so it's,
Yeah.
it's the conversion process.
And you know
Our
what?
children.
I think that's another really good point is, have we gone through that journey? Because if you yourself was raised in the church and then you have a child or someone close to you questioning things, does it make you feel a little insecure in where your faith is because you haven't maybe gone through that process? And so that's another thing to consider or look at does it disrupt your well-being a little bit because it's questioning your beliefs, which then makes you feel a little uncomfortable. So
Yeah, maybe that's what because
yeah.
there are things that we go, whoa, that's a
Yeah.
bit tricky.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and our teenagers will bring them up bluntly to us. And
Yeah.
so if we sit there and go, no, that's not true, or no, that can't be right, or that's, like,
Yeah.
just believe and don't question.
Yeah.
I don't believe that's even what the leaders are teaching us now, that
No,
there's
certainly not
so
now.
much. Certainly not now. Sometimes I feel like the early church did teach more like that, but now it's like and when you look at the LDS tools and all of the little videos and things on all the different topics,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, no, you're allowed to question, you're allowed to ask, you're allowed to think this through. This is the way it's we're God's in training. We're meant to be
Yeah.
questioning and learning and growing, and some of the issues are tricky.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
to dismiss that and say, no, that's not, it doesn't exist. It's like,
Yeah.
no
Or
wonder your children
to
go,
feel
well,
threatened by the question. And it's okay to not know the answer. Say, I mean, that's a great opportunity to potentially get closer to whoever it is and say,
mm,
gosh, I'm not sure about that. Let's go explore it. I'll explore that
mm,
with you. And
mm.
um, you know,
And
you can steer things
there's
in
hard,
the right direction.
admit there's hard questions, admit there's
Yeah.
things we
Yeah.
don't know,
Yes.
admit the things the church doesn't know. I think we forget the church is still being restored.
Yes.
It's only in the process of restoration. So things change.
Yeah.
And, I'm stunned at the early members who coped with some of those big changes. It's,
Yeah. Yeah.
so our little changes are, the temple ceremony changes. It's like,
Yeah.
it's an hour
So
now. It's better.
So I guess I'm feeling prompted at the moment to just reassure people
Mm-hmm.
that you are loved and you're amazing, and that the place that, whatever is going on in your family, whatever questioning is happening, is it's going to be okay. And it doesn't have anything to do with your close relationship with God. That's between you and God, and to find some strength and comfort in that, and know that you are loved and accepted just the way you are.
Mm. Very important. We're loved and accepted just as we are, where we are right now. We're not expected to be perfect. It's not even that we don't have to be perfect. We're not even expected to be perfect.
Yeah,
And we will make mistakes.
that's why we have the atonement, but we get
And the
to
other thing that really helped me in my
benefit from that.
parenting journey was knowing that God sent those spirit children to my family, knowing what the future would look like.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's not like, I got divorced from my temple marriage, and it's like, oh, my poor kids, I was supposed to raise them in this really good family, and, we split it up, and it's,
Yeah.
but God knew that was going to happen. Those children were sent to that family knowing that. It's not
That was
like
part of their progression.
and it's part of their journey
Right.
as much as it's part of our journey.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you what they're supposed to learn from that, but it's part of the journey of life. And,
Yeah.
no child is going to be born into a beautiful family and have a beautiful life and have nothing go wrong, even though that's our dream for our children when we're holding this cute little baby. That's actually not life.
Yeah, it wasn't even actually the plan, right? That's not
No, it's
what
not
the
the
plan
plan.
was. So, yeah,
But it was our plan when we had the baby.
true. Yeah, we were all sure it was going to turn out that way, right?
Yeah, we were going to have this baby, and we're going to look after it, and we're going to love it, and it's going to be happy in our family, and we're going to have this wonderful time, and they're going to go on a mission and go married in the temple and live happily ever after.
Yeah. And I have kind of
there's a prophet that just I read it yesterday or the day before. He said the happily ever after doesn't come in this life. That's actually the next life. We forget we're only in part 2 of the play.
That's true. I like that. The other thing that I think is, well, I kind of have a flip of your story, or many stories probably, in that I wasn't active, so I didn't raise my children in the gospel, or to even teach them the gospel. I have, my first 2 children were baptized, but my last one wasn't. And so they, should I feel some regret, or feel shame about not making the right choices when I was younger and giving them that opportunity? I actually just really can't afford to. I have too many other things I am still trying to let go of, or, beliefs that are getting in
I'm
my
not
way.
sure
I have to add that one.
but just forget. No, President Nelson was raised in an inactive family, and I think the story is he didn't get baptized till he was 14 or something. Like it was his choice. Like it wasn't.
No.
Yeah. So, and he's become the prophet. So, like,
Yeah. Well, and so that's true. Like, two parts, I guess, to my story. One is I don't feel shame for that, because I know I was wanted everything for my children, and if I had the same testimony I had today, I would have raised them much different, but I didn't. And I know that I still was doing the absolute best I could. I poured, my heart and soul into raising my kids the best way I knew how. And so there's no regret there. But the other thing is, take my story of being in a divorced family, which is many of the people in this community, and a very religious dad, so every other weekend I went to church growing up because I was raised that way. And then when I was at home with my mom, couldn't talk about the church. But I was the one that still made the choice to not be active and go to church until I was in my 50s. So think about that in terms of your children, right? Because we know, especially if you are in a divorced family, or if one of the spouses leaves, is not, it has made other faith choices, then you have all those fears about how that's going to influence your children growing up and things. And yeah, there is that. But and there was definitely, my parents influenced some of my behavior, but I made the choice and I take responsibility for how that turned out. And I also am now a very active, strong testimony, still in my 50s for another day, individual. So, at any point in time, if you want to use the word come back, I don't know if that's even an okay term. I mean, but I made a choice um, to be in the church. I'm trying to think of a diplomatically correct way to say that, but without being derogatory. But anyway, so that's just something to ponder and think about. And one of the big reasons part of why I made the choice I made, I had a lot of fear as a child. My mom really mocked the church. And so I had the flip side of this equation. Like, I was afraid to say that I loved going to church, I would get in trouble for that. So I had to work through all of that fear of admitting that I actually believed in the church and that I had a very strong testimony of it, and to be vocal about that and to share that, because I was so afraid of how other people would judge me, and especially my mother. And so I kind of had an opposite story of what a lot of children that are raised in the church do. But the one thing I will say is, as I was looking at it and trying to make a decision about where I should go or what I should do, the thing that really stood out to me is that it was my dad and my stepmom were this loving, we accept you no matter what. Like, I never felt like an outcast or like I was loved less than the other children who are all, still very faithful in the church. I never, except for one of them, but I never felt like we were treated any different. All the things were kind of in my head as me separating myself out, or me thinking they were judging me poorly, but they never acted that way, or influenced me in that way, or criticized me in that way ever. And so I thought, gosh, why am I so afraid to say that I want to be a part of that, when my alternative, was a really negative experience. But so it did have a little bit of influence. And like I said, I was in my 50s when I made that decision. So it's, don't
So it
panic.
took a little while, and I think
Don't panic.
don't panic. That's right. I think they're the messages of it doesn't matter where your children are at.
Yeah.
Accept them for who they are right now.
Yeah.
Love them for who they are right now, because that's what God does. He loves us no matter what, wherever
Yeah.
we're at, accepts for wherever we're at. And yeah, look, I know that if they're going into drugs and even alcohol, you've probably got some panics, but that's a separate discussion from the church. Like, that's not, you don't have to put the church into that conversation.
Yeah.
And the love is the thing that it's the thing. I don't know another word.
It is the thing. It is.
It's the thing.
Yeah.
That's our Christianity. That's our sort of depicting what God is. And so no matter where your children are at, let's not talk about them as inactive or left the church, or,
gone astray. That one.
Gone astray. Yeah. It's like they haven't gone astray. They're following God's plan for them.
They're making an alternative choice.
And they're making choices. And that's the whole plan, is agency.
Yeah.
And your children have, once they, and we're talking adult children here, we're not talking 5-year-olds. 5-year-olds, you throw in the car and take them to church. Right? That's a different conversation. But yeah, once they get, and I think somewhere in that mid-teens, they get to make the choices, because that's what agency is.
Yeah.
And it's not that they're having a disastrous life. It's about learning who they are and learning they've got to get that testimony for themselves. And most of our examples are somewhere in your teens, you get
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And you've got to let them be free to go find that for themselves. And they might get it as a 14-year-old boy, and they might not. And the chances are more that they might not.
Yeah.
And they might get it in their 20s, 30s,
Or
40s,
their
50s,
50s.
60s.
They might be really
And
slow learners like me.
they can, well, they might not even get it in this life.
Yeah.
And even that's
Right.
okay,
You're right.
because there's another whole life to go, and they
Yeah.
still got chances. It's not like they've lost or they've failed, or, you know,
Yes. Yeah.
it's and you know, and I think the other one that really upsets me in the church, and it started with that empty chair idea of, you know, we've got to be all sealed together and all active and all coming to church so that, you know, no one's left out.
Hmm.
No one's left out in God's kingdom. That's not the way God works.
Yeah. I like that. That's really good. Important to say.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's you
Yeah.
know, and even the sealing is all about the whole family being sealed. And I think this
Mhm.
is only just, I've just really understood this. It's not couples to their children, because that's not the way it works. Couples, the children go get married, and so,
Yeah.
you know, you think, well, it's really just the couple, but it's the couple to the parents, to the grandparents, to the great grandparents, right back to the Abrahamic covenant. That's the
Right.
point. We are the family of Abraham,
Right.
sealed as the family of Abraham.
Yeah. So we're all,
So don't,
it's
we're
much
all part of
bigger.
it.
Yeah.
It's much bigger. Stop thinking of it as just, you know, you failed because your children aren't there. It's like,
Yeah.
yes, they are. They're all part of this.
Yeah.
It's just, we're only in the second act, guy. We're in the messy bit of the love story of, you know,
Definitely.
it,
We're
and
definitely in the messy bit. No question
we're
there.
in the messy bit. And it's, you know, all stories have, you know, the beginning, the messy bit, and then the ending. The
Yeah.
ending's not till the next life. There's plenty of time. Don't talk about your children as lost or left or gone or
Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
those terrible words. They are your children of God.
Yeah. Yeah. Then the other thing is, think about if your relation, the way I really learned this for myself was using my marriage as an example. When I first separated from my husband, we were enmeshed with each other that I couldn't discern my thoughts, my feelings from his. Like, it was a very unhealthy relationship, a very unhealthy connection. And um, so it's hard to know. Our families can, especially if they've grown up with in a particular culture, in a particular religion, to say, oh, it's the religion that's the problem. Or just like I would say, oh, it was my spouse that was the problem, or it was me, actually, is what I said a lot, that was the problem. So I think until I was separated and I got that space and I was able to see the forest through the trees and separate out and separate, oh, this is the religion, this is the culture, this is my family dynamics, and could see it from a more objective place, it was easier for me to determine what is important to me, what are my values, what are my beliefs, and to get myself back, really. So I think that can be possible with our children, depending on how you've raised them and the dynamics within your family and your extended family. I do think it's the potential to blame things on the religion that may not have anything to do with the religion, but it's all so tightly enmeshed that it's really hard for people to figure out what's what until they
Mm.
create some space for themselves. So asking for that space and separating themselves could be a really healthy process for them to get that conversion story, or to figure out and to see for themselves. If you're divorced, that I would be pretty safe bet to say there were some unhealthy patterns in that family that were really the issue and not the fact that it was the religion that was the problem. Maybe there was some of both, who knows? But it's important as you go through that process and to figure out how to separate that enmeshed culture, religion, family dynamics, to parse it out and sift through it and really take into account what is important now as an adult, and to honor them in their process and support them in knowing that they can work that out with God, just like, you can work out what's going on for you with God. So.
Well, thank you. I think that's a really good place to finish for today. We're going to have a future broadcast about estrangement when these issues get worse. We're going to have a different one about that.
For sure. And then the other thing I think we want to have some discussion about is the dynamic of when half our children are faith-based and the other half aren't. Like, how does it affect family get-togethers? How do we meld some of that stuff and support each other without betraying ourselves and our beliefs, but honoring still our children and all those things? So I think we can definitely have another episode related to navigating some of those tricky waters.
There's some good fun stuff in that.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you, Kim, for being part of this conversation today and being part. I hope that everybody's helped to understand that our children haven't.
Just love them. Keep loving them.
Yeah, just keep loving them.
It's all going to be okay. God's got their back too.
God's got their back too. Thank you.
All right.
And we will talk to you all again soon.